Hey folks, it's Matt with Basemap, and today we're going to cover the Kansas draw, state where I lived for almost 10 years. Okay, first thing you need to understand are deadlines. There's a turkey draw that happens February 9th. That's long and gone at this point, but no, it's the first draw of the year, and that's for non-residents and residents. We'll dive into the details in a second. There's non-resident deer draw that happens April 26th, and then there's a resident firearm, either sex, either species, deer draw, that's June 14th. And on that same date, you also need to apply for pronghorn or elk if you'd like to hunt those. And we'll get into the nuances about what hunts are actually draws and which aren't draws, and based on residency and all that good detail in it next. So, as you read through the regulations, it can be a little confusing and daunting. I know, having lived there for a while. So here's what you need to know. As a resident, you must apply to a limited draw for the following hunts. If you want to hunt in Unit 4 for spring turkey, that is a draw. If you would like to be able to chase mule deer with a firearm in the western half of the state, that tag, a firearms either sex, either species deer tag, is a limited draw. And then if you'd like to hunt pronghorn with a firearm or a muzzleloader, that's a limited draw hunt. And lastly, if you want to chase elk in Kansas on any of the military bases, you will also need to apply for a draw. Sounds like a lot, but really your turkey hunts in general and your deer hunts are over the counter. And then if you want to chase pronghorn with your bow, you can also just buy a license over the counter. Okay, what about non-residents? So non-residents, all turkey draws move to a limited draw in 2024. So if you hadn't hunted turkey in Kansas and you really wanted to, you now will have to apply to a draw to be able to do that. And then all of your deer hunts are basically a draw in Kansas as well as a non-resident. So there's one exception to that. If you're a landowner tenant, so either you own enough land or you work land that's large enough in Kansas, you can buy an over-the-counter license if you meet those requirements. Okay, let's dive into the draw system for each of these hunts. For turkey, those non-resident licenses were all under a random draw. So basically everybody had the same odds, and it's just based on, the amount of quota we had and the number of applicants for a particular unit. So that was all random in 2024, but there's a very good chance that that's going to change next year. I imagine it could move to a preference point system, which is what we have in place for Unit 4 turkey hunts. Now, those are only resident and landowner tenants in Unit 4, and those are under a preference point system. The way a preference point system works is that each year you're unsuccessful or that you choose to purchase a preference point, you build those points, you can build them up, and then when you actually choose to apply, the way that we allocate quota for a particular unit is we start with individuals who have the most preference points, and we work our way down the list until we run out of quota. If we get to a point level where there are more applicants than we have quota remaining, we'll randomly give out those remaining quota to applicants at that point level until it's all gone. Okay, so that's the way a preference point system works, and it's good to know that because your deer resident either sex, either species licenses are given out using a preference point system. And then your non-resident white-tailed deer licenses also use a preference point system. One word of caution or understanding, I guess not caution, just understanding for the non-resident white-tailed deer is that when you apply for those licenses, you're not just applying to a specific unit, you actually get to pick a primary unit and then a secondary unit. That secondary unit has to be adjoining your primary unit, but you can actually hunt both of those units then, and it can work out so that the strategy could be to apply for, let's say, pick a primary unit that has a lower preference point limit to draw, that adjoins to the unit you really want to hunt. So that's a little tip. Now, there's also a mule deer permit for non-residents that you could draw, but in order to be eligible, you first have to draw that whitetail permit. And then if you do draw that whitetail permit, and you say, yes, please enter me into the mule deer drawing, that mule deer permit will just be given out randomly among people who were successful in drawing the whitetail permit and indicated they would like a mule deer permit. So that's the way those deer draws work. Now let's jump into pronghorn. Pronghorn also use a preference point system, and there's two quotas for pronghorn. There's the resident, and then there's the landowner tenant quota. So the total quota is split between those two groups. It's 50-50, but they just use a preference point system. Obviously, if you're a landowner tenant, there's fewer of those applicants, and so it generally takes fewer preference points to draw. Okay, well, I saved the complicated one for last. It's elk. Elk has sort of a hurdle system. All right, there's military applicants and resident applicants. Now, if you're a resident applicant, there's two draws you got to make it through to be successful. First, you're put in a drawing with all other residents, and elk uses a bonus point system. The way a bonus point system works is that for each bonus point you have, you basically get assigned a random number, and then the lowest random number that you were assigned will be used to rank you against other applicants. So you can see how if you had, let's say, 10 bonus points, you have 10 chances at getting a low random number, and that's much better than only having one. So that's the way the bonus point system works. In Kansas, first residents are ranked against other residents in that system, and then the 100 resident applicants with the lowest random number will move to a second drawing where they're ranked against military members, again using that bonus point system, and we'll allocate licenses that way. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, there's choices. You'll notice when you go to fill your application, you can select up to 4 choices for most of these hunts. We'll start by allocating licenses among first choice applicants. So we'll give out quota using, either that preference point system or bonus point system to first choice applicants. And then if there's still quota remaining at the end of that, we'll go to second choice, then third, then fourth. In general, most of your hunts are allocated at the end of the first choice. So make your first choice count, and those are the things you need to know. Good luck this year applying to Kansas.